Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm back from vacation, so I get to record. I've been, there haven't been any uploads in the past few days, which is not how I would have necessarily liked it to be, but I mean, I can't just turn out these videos overnight, so forgive me for not having a video for the past like 3 or 4 days, but I'm back. I'm super down to do some more content here. But before we get started, I want to talk something a little bit more real, just for a minute or so. There's I guess, an incident that happened in some of the ADV Discord spaces, where somebody was crashing out about the game, and I get it. This is a frustrating game. Sometimes you try to play to win, and you try to play to have fun, and sometimes you play against strategies that take some skill out of the game, that take some fun out of the game, and I get it, being mad about it. But you have to contain your crash out so that you're not hurling, for the lack of a better term, slurs at people. We don't want that in the community, okay? If you're somebody who is gonna throw slurs around in comment sections, particularly like say on my YouTube videos, I'm just gonna ban you. I don't have room or time in my life for that kind of negativity. I don't need that. And yeah, so please just be a good person. That has nothing to do with Mons, but more to do with life. But we're here to talk about Registeel. I subtitled this video ADV Stall 102. So if you are big on Stall, congratulations. We're back again to talk about a Stall team. If you don't like Stall, well, I hope that you still stick around so that you can maybe glean some information about how to play against Stall, because Stall is a part of the game. You're going to have to learn it one way or another. So that's kind of what I have to say here. If you would like to watch my Umbreon video, that was the first time that I talked about Stall on this generation. So, Viability Rankings. Let's not get into any pretenses about Registeel being an OU Pokemon. It is a pretty good Pokemon in the OU tier, but it's not quite consistent enough to achieve OU viability. That being said, it's only the third Pokemon out from this D tier. Not every Pokemon D and up is OU ranked. Of course, we have Smeargle, Jinx, and Raikou in the D tier. Medicham now is OU, which I don't believe I've made a video, or at least not recorded a video since that has happened, which is really awesome. I'm gonna give credit to Zets for his Zets Hyper Offense for making that happen. Although, maybe I should give some credit to myself for that Medicham video that coming out before it became an OU staple, as it were. No, that's probably a little bit too much. It's been used a lot in tournament, and it was a long time coming. But Registeel down here at 34. It's, again, pretty solid. I did a poll about the Reggies that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but I want you to note like how closely rated all three of them are. You have Regice, Registeel, Kingdra sitting there awkwardly in the middle, sticking out like a sore thumb, and then Regirock right after. So kind of interesting. That shoutouts to Zapdos for making an appearance here. I meant to get rid of that. So let's talk once again about physical and special in this tier. You've probably seen this slide before. I think it was in my Blaziken video. But whether a move is physical or special depends on the type of move that it is. So you have your physical moves here on the left and your special on the right. The shorthand to remember this would be look at all the evolutions and then put the dragon token over Sylveon because Fairy doesn't exist. And there you go. That's all the special types in pre-Gen 4. So kind of interesting. If you didn't know that, now you know. Go on to the next. We're talking about mixed bulk here because, well, if you know anything about Registeel, you're gonna know that its bulk is really what it's valued for. Most Pokemon have bulk weighted on one side. Think about Blissey with its, what is it, 135 Spadef, and then 10 defense. And then Steelix is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, 200 defense, and I believe 65 Spadef. 65 is not terrible, but honestly, it's not great. Actually, let's check. Let me check that real quick just to make sure. I hate that. I hate that Steelix is not in Gen 9. I would have used that guy a lot. Yeah, 65. That's right. I mentioned that because the builder defaults to Gen 9, which that's okay, I guess. Most people are going to be playing Gen 9, but it's kind of annoying when you try to look up a Pokemon that is not in Gen 9 right now. So in any case, let's talk about these Pokemon that have the luxury of the mixed bulk. So these are all of the OU legal Pokemon that have over a 100 in both of their base defenses. There are plenty of Pokemon that have a 100 in one of their defenses. Take like Tyranitar with the 110 defense 100 Spadef, or your Jirachi and Celebi, which have 100 in both. But these are the Pokemon that are blessed with bulk here. So let's take a look at their base defense and special defense. I kind of have them color-coded once again. The gold for the Pokemon that has the highest, silver for the Pokemon that has the second highest, bronze for the Pokemon that has the third highest. And then we have cyan and white for 4th and 5th place. So Registeel, as you can see, has the highest base defense and special defense of all 5 of these Pokemon. Does that mean it has the highest defense and special defense of any Pokemon? No. There are some Pokemon that have really, really high defense stats that have not so high special defense stats. Take, for example, Steelix. Take, for example, Regirock, which we'll talk about in a moment. Technically, there is one more Pokemon that's not on this list here, Shuckle, which has 230 in both defense and special defense. But because its HP is so abysmally low, I just don't pay any respect to it, you know? I get it, Shuckle is a funny guy, but I don't really think it's I don't think it's good in this generation. I'll shout it out in Gen 6 Ubers, where I really liked to spam it on a Sticky Webs offense team, but no, I don't think it's got any sauce in this generation, so sorry if you're waiting on the Shuckle video. But yeah, look, like Registeel is definitely one of the best here. Now let's take a look at their HP stat, because HP matters a lot as well. And this is where some of these Pokemon kind of stumble, particularly Dusclops and Claydol. Dusclops with a base 40 HP almost undoes all of the nice stuff about its defense and special defense. Like, yeah, Pickercross talks about how you can multiply HP and one of your defense stats to get an effective bulk. So you want both stats to be high. So in the case of, like, say, Dusclops versus Suicune, you would much rather sacrifice a little bit of defense for a little more HP, so that you can have a well-rounded, balanced type of defensive profile. This is why Suicune, I think, is the gold standard of defensive Pokemon in this generation. Well, discounting the fact that it's weak to sand and spikes, but I digress. Umbreon is also looking very respectable with the base 95 defense, or not defense, HP. That goes really well with the 110 and 130, but Registeel is not too far behind at the base 80. If you were trying to look at, say, who is more specially bulky here, it's going to be between Umbreon and Registeel, so we can do a little calculation here. 95 times 130 will give us 12,350. and then 80 times 150 will give us 12,000 on the dot. So Umbreon is slightly more specially bulky, but Registeel makes up for it in its defense stat. So that's kind of the conclusion that we're going to draw here, is that Registeel stands toe-to-toe with Suicune and Umbreon for, like, probably the best mixed bulk in the generation. But what it has in its defensive type, being Steel, i.e. a Sand immunity, gives it kind of better longevity overall. Now, this is not to discount the utility that Suicune and Umbreon offer. Suicune is a very dangerous endgame sweeper. Umbreon is a really good cleric with Wish support. I also like Synchronize as an ability. If you want to hear more about it, please go watch my Umbreon video. But the Sand immunity is huge. Now, the one caveat is that Registeel does not get a recovery move outside of Rest, but then again, neither does Suicune, so we can't really fault Registeel on this comparison. Now, let's compare the Regis to themselves here. So, here are the three. I want to note that they all have a base 80 HP, so I'm not going to talk about that. It's the same across the board. And yeah, so Registeel kind of does the Goldilocks thing, where it fits right in the middle between the two. Regirock has 200 defense, 100 SpDef. Regice has 100 defense, 200 special defense. So Registeel splits the difference between the two at 150. There's sometimes an argument that you want to be in the middle. You want the best of both worlds, but there's also an argument, and many times is the case in Pokemon, that you would rather be really good at one thing at the cost of other things than to be mediocre at all things. Now, that doesn't super duper apply because we're talking about 100, 150, and 200 base stats. Those are all really high. I mean, even 100 defense for Regice, that's actually pretty good. There are not that many Pokemon in this generation that have a defense stat that high. So, like, let's give some credit to these two on the ends for still being good mixed walls. Registeel, of course, because it has the extra that's extra compared to Regice's defense and Regirock's SpDef, doing, again, best of both worlds here. This is how I would more so view it. But I think the thing that distinguishes Registeel from these two even more so is if we take a look at their highest attack stat. Regirock has a base 100 attack, pretty respectable. Regice has a base 100 special attack stat, also pretty respectable. But Registeel is kind of left out to dry with the 75, which is not great. Yeah, and that's going to play into sort of the narrative that we're going to construct about Registeel going forward. But before we talk too much about Registeel in specific, let's also look at another comparison for the Regis, is this poll that I put out on my channel a few days ago. So I asked you guys, what do you think is the strongest Regi in this format? And almost half of you said Regice, which I will acknowledge that I've made a Regice video, which again, you can go check out. And I've featured Regice on a handful of teams, even outside of the Regice video. Whereas I played one game with Regirock that got featured on this channel. I believe it was also in the Umbreon video. And I've played 0 games with Registeel. So I acknowledge that there's probably a little bit of bias here. Let's see how the Regis feel about that. Good on you, Regice. Registeel, you're you're leaking out your face, and Regirock is mad about it. So yeah, I acknowledge that there's going to be some bias here, probably, based on the fact that the people who are responding to this are people who have probably watched my videos and probably have seen me play with Regice, and that might have swayed your opinion. Now, that being said, I also think that Regice is the best. I think that, as one person put it in Zscored, when you get really familiar with this tier, you're gonna have an affinity for one of the Regis, and for me, I think it's Regice, but we're gonna talk about Registeel and see if that changes my opinion there. And then also, I want to shout out Camu Zeke Sirius, I think that's how you say that name, for this sprite work here. I get all of these sprites, these PMD style sprites, from a place called PMD Sprite Repository, or I believe it's called, let me see, PMD, sprites.pmdcollab.org. I encourage you to check it out as well. There are a lot of artists who do their own sprite work to make these portraits, and Camu Zeke Sirius did all of them for the Regis, so and they're all so good. Like, I love the way that he gets sorry if I'm misgendering, but that Camu Zeke gets the hands involved to make the Regis more expressive. Like, it's just, that's impressive to me. So Camu Zeke Sirius, if you somehow are watching this video, hit me up on Discord. I would love to talk about some art. So we just talked about Registeel and its mixed attacking split of 75-75. Does this make Registeel too passive? Well, arguably yes, because the attacking stats are so mediocre, but it kind of gets worse than that. Registeel, because it's a steel type, it really is lacking for stab. HP Steel is basically the only stab move that Registeel gets. It might get Metal Claw, but I mean, even if it does, Metal Claw is such a terrible move. And Steel, frankly, is a pretty low value coverage option. And I know what you're going to say, well, Meteor Mash is great. And yes, it is a great move. But you also have to keep in mind that it's Metagross with the highest attack stat in the format. Well, okay, barring Slaking and Metacham, technically. And I guess also technically Azumarill, but forget that. And it's a 100 base power move, and it's stab. It's like, I mean, if Salamence had that on a flying type move, we'd be talking about flying as one of the strongest types in the game. But Steel is, outside of Metagross, Steel is actually a pretty mediocre, frankly bad offensive type. You're only hitting Rock and Ice for super effective, and both of those types are already hit super effective by fighting. So you would, at least offensively speaking, I think you'd rather have a fighting type. Now, fighting is also has some immunities, or namely just Ghost, where Steel is not effective. That's a weird way to put that, but Steel hits every type, at least for not very effective damage. But I think this gets a little worse when you realize that HP Steel, being a base 70 move, off of your 75 attack stat, like, even though you do have stab, that's still pretty weak. A lot of Pokemon with, like, halfway decent attacking stats are going to do more damage, even though they don't have the stab boost. So that's not really doing much. And then also, when you have to use HP or hidden power for a stab, you're missing out on hidden power for a coverage. Now, granted, I don't know if Registeel would want to use hidden power for coverage. Granted, its move pool is a little bit limited even outside of not having a stab. So it might be useful for, like, the sake of having, say, like a hidden power Grass to hit Swampert. But again, because you have such low attacking stats, it's almost like it's not even worth it. By comparison, Regirock with its Earthquake and Regice's T-Bolt are great complements to their particular stabs. Rock Ground is one of the best combos for a physical attacker, and Ice Electric is also a great combo for special attackers. And when you have base 100 offensive stats with that combination, then you're actually pretty good as a defensive slash, or I should say as like a bulky attacker type. Now, Registeel does get access to Earthquake. I believe it also gets access to Thunderbolts. Let me just check real quick to make sure. Although sometimes I like saying things and being wrong because somebody will comment that and I will get a little algo boost for that. So you should, in fact, hastily comment to let me know that Registeel gets both of those moves, which in fact I've confirmed, despite the fact that I just went and checked it and confirmed it. But yeah, so Registeel has similar coverage. But like because the attacking stats are so low and Registeel's stab is not existent really, it doesn't really feel like it makes a lot of use out of, or gets a lot of use out of the coverage moves that it gets. Does this thing get superpower still? Yes. Cool. So all of this is to basically say that it's easy to come to the conclusion that Registeel is too passive. And the problem with passivity is that you're giving opponents too much momentum. If you're not attacking them, threatening to do a lot of damage, then you're giving them turns to set things up. If they want to curse, if they want to calm mind, if they're trying to set spikes. Like, all of that stuff is really dangerous, and you can't afford to allow your opponent free turns to do that. But that's not to say that a passive Pokemon doesn't have a role. So let's examine some of the sets that Registeel might use to either overcome or embrace its passivity. So let's see. So the first set that we'll talk about is Rest Talk, which I'll be honest, I have used Registeel before this video, and it was on a similarly defensive team, and this is sort of the set that I used. Instead of Toxic, I used Thunderwave. So what are the sort of advantages or disadvantages of this set? This is kind of a big wall of text, but I'm going to summarize it here. Seismic Toss is generally preferred to Earthquake due to Registeel's low offenses, but Earthquake can be used to hit Steel and Poison types, both of whom are immune to Toxic, for super effective damage. Though, you want to note that Pokemon like Skarmory and Weezing are immune to Earthquake, and while Steelix and Fortress take neutral or super effective damage from Earthquake, they're going to take more damage on average from Seismic Toss thanks to their higher defense stats. The real reason that Earthquake is... Hold on, what did they say? The real reason to use Earthquake is, in fact, to let Registeel take on Substitute Jirachi. Okay, that makes sense. See, when you skip words, sometimes the sentences don't make much sense. With about 100 attack EVs, Earthquake can break a defensive Jirachi substitute, which I assume they mean the Sub-Calm Mind Jirachi variant. I believe that's the one that uses Psychic Fire coverage. So, I mean, you're still playing with fire, right? 20% burn chance, and that would kind of be annoying for Registeel, but thankfully you have Rest and Sleep Talk on this set to sort of combat that. Earthquake will allow you to take on Raikou more effectively, 2-hit KOing it with 100 attack EVs, plus Sandstorm damage. And finally, Magneton is shut down by Earthquake as well, though Seismic Toss is needed to defeat Substitute Zapdos. So there's kind of a trade-off there. I would personally recommend Seismic Toss over Earthquake in a vacuum, but it may depend on your team. You know, you have 5 other Pokemon, and sometimes those other Pokemon are effective at taking on your Skarmory and your Weezing and your Zapdos. And you might need a little bit more help against Jirachi, Raikou, Magneton. So that might be a reason why you would want to use Earthquake instead. Now keep in mind, though, that you're going to have to invest more in attack. So that means you're going to have to cut into your special defense investment. I also want to note 20 speed EVs. This is kind of a This is a little bit of a relic of the past here. The only relevant Pokemon that's hitting, so this is going to hit 141. The only relevant Pokemon that hits 140 is a minus speed nature Swampert, which still exists. There's still plenty of minus speed Swamperts running around, but a lot of Pokemon were chilling in this sort of tier here. Like Regice used to go this fast, and as such, the Donphan used to go that fast, and like all these Pokemon here, but a lot of them have kind of phased out of the metagame. Donphan is pretty rare. Regice is still like not very consistently used. So I don't know how relevant it is to be faster than a minus speed Swampert. And in fact, like if you're going to use Earthquake Registeel, I would just not even bother with the speed EVs. Like you're not doing anything to Swampert really anyway. So I would I wouldn't be so worried about this. Now, you know, back in the day when Regice and Donphan were a little bit more popular and they were running about the speed as well, then maybe it was worth it to speed creep, but yeah, I would not recommend doing this now. So my sort of conclusion about this set is that it is extremely passive into immunities like Skarmory and Gengar, and it requires a lot of support to work. So yeah, with Toxic and Seismic Toss or Earthquake, you're not hitting Gengar at all. That's why I kind of like T-Wave on this sort of set. It can be really nice to have a move to cripple the Gengar, and especially if your team does not have like a Pursuit Trapper to help you out with Gengar, then that can be really nice. But I definitely value Toxic, and it's really good on your TSS structures. This sort of set, you are going to want to pair it with Tyranitar like almost all the time, because sand damage racking up is really, really important for Registeel to make progress on certain things, particularly with Seismic Toss. Now we have the lead Registeel, which you would think would be a pretty popular one. I see a lot of lead Registeels, and well, kind of spoilers, I'm going to lead Registeel with the team that I show. This is a pretty strange EV set, but it kind of makes sense. We're going to see what Smogon has to say. Registeel works well against some common leads, namely Aerodactyl and Zapdos. Due to its immense defensive stats, even Choice Band Aerodactyl cannot beat it. So I think that's what the 16 defense is for, is so that you can live an extra Earthquake. Thunderwave is very annoying, while Rest keeps Registeel in the game. Hidden Power Steel provides useful stab, but if Registeel forgoes Rock Slide, it might run into difficulty with lead substitute Zapdos. So, yeah, this is a little bit more offensive. It's like a bulky attacker approach to Registeel. It still has Rest at the bottom. Rest is a pretty good move for Registeel because it's really hard to even 3-hit KO Registeel, let alone 2-hit it. So you can commonly Rest Loop and stall out a Pokemon of its PP, or just kind of rest and get back to like a middle HP stat so that you can get another Thunder Wave or another HP Steal or Rock Slide, whatever move you're going off. I think it's important to note that on this particular set, since you're leading it, you will be running into some Tyranitar leads. You might want to consider Superpower as an option, perhaps over Earthquake. Now, there's going to be some caveats with that, right? Like, Earthquake is your best move to hit, say, Metagross. So losing that could be a little bit not great. But with Superpower, you're threatening potentially an Oko onto many Tyranitar sets, so that could be another option to explore. I'll say though that while you're decent into Aerodactyl and Zapdos on lead, you're gonna have some issues versus Metagross, particularly a CB Metagross, since your Earthquake is only gonna deal like 37%. I was just talking about how you were decent into Metagross, but lead Metagross is usually gonna pack a little more of a punch. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant on the Metagross matchup here, because it's going to 2-hit KO you with Choice Banded Earthquake. So if you don't have counter, then you're going to be in a tough spot. I guess you could also Thunder Wave to cripple that particular Metagross, and you'll know for sure that it's banded, which means that you could switch to something like a Skarmory to punish the lock into Earthquake. You're also going to let Suicune get a free turn, generally. I mean, you might be able to Thunder Wave, but if the Suicune has Substitute, then you're in a rough spot, and you don't have the sauce to break a Suicune Substitute, so particularly like a defensive Suicune Substitute, so that's not great. And then you're also pretty easily switched into by Swampert with this set, and granted, most Registeel sets are pretty easily switched into by Swampert, particularly the refresh Swamperts that can shrug off the Toxic. So, yeah. But this is a pretty nice lead for a bulky offense type of team that likes the Thunder Wave support early, so I think that there's some merit to this. We'll go on to the Choice Band set, which, what do we have to say here? Even with the Choice Band, Registeel simply lacks power. Its only threatening move is Explosion, and even that doesn't phase Skarmory. Now, phase meaning, like, cause hesitation on the part of Skarmory, not, like, pseudo-haze. Although it kind of is like a pseudo-haze when you think about it, because you explode and then the Pokemon all of a sudden is not on the field anymore. That's, like, kind of crazy. Moreover, Regirock is generally superior as it has a higher attack stat. Registeel has advantages of being able to take on water-type attacks, but it can't take down the water types that switch into it. So, yeah, that's kind of the rub with this set. I would say that Regirock, Metagross, and even Steelix are just better CB boomers, thanks to their like decent stab and higher attack without having to sacrifice the bulk. So all of them have pretty good bulk and can take a hit or two, and have much stronger moves, much stronger attacking stats. Well, Steelix is pretty close. It's only 85. But Steelix also has Stab, Earthquake, and if you want to, you can use Iron Tail, which is pretty inconsistent, but you know, you're not gonna complain about a base 100 stab move. I mean, even if it only hits 75% of the time. The thing is, that's still more expected value than, say, Registeel using Hidden Power Steel. So, like, keep that in mind. So, yeah, this Choice Band set, I don't think it's very good. I think there are a lot of other Choice Band users you could use instead that accomplish a similar goal to Registeel, namely Metagross. But perhaps you have a Metagross on your team, and you still want a Choice Band Steel type for some reason, in which case, your options are Registeel and Steelix, and while I might come more down on the Steelix side, I guess I could see an argument for Registeel. I wouldn't say, that Thunder Wave could still work on this set. Thunder Wave is just a great move and can slot in really well. So if you're willing to forego, say, rock coverage, then you could have a Thunder Wave here instead. Now, again, Zapdos is going to be a problem for you if you drop the rock coverage, but kind of, I digress there. Curse. So this is a set that has been really popular as of late, especially if you're looking at, say, Revival tournaments. A lot of people are using this Curse set in tournament, and I've seen it on ladder quite a few times as well. As its defenses are great to begin with, Registeel can take the beating while boosting up with Curse. Then it can heal off the damage with Rest. Standard phasers such as Skarmory and Suicune handle this set with ease. Okay, well, that's kind of with the caveat that you can even phase the Registeel. I mean, take a look at Jim and that video that he put out before he decided to play some serious teams, which, thank God for that. Like, I love Jim. We're actually going to talk about Jim later, believe it or not. And I love his videos, but sometimes, you know, the goofy like one Registeel on the team sets to kind of beat some frankly bad players. Like, okay, that's kind of cool and funny and novel, but I think I prefer when he plays a little bit more seriously, because I think I just think it's nice to watch somebody who kind of knows what they're doing. Um, and I hope that's why you're watching me, but I admit that I'm a fraud, so I don't really know what I'm doing most of the time. Sometimes Registeel can drop a second attacking move, so in this case, maybe your HP Steel or your Earthquake. You probably don't want to be mono Earthquake, I'm just going to be honest with you. Um, so that you can have Amnesia, and you have like this defensive double dance going on, where you have Amnesia to boost your Spadef 2 stages, and Curse to boost your defense 1 stage at a time. And then you can end up at like +6 attack, +6 defense, +6 Spadef. And that can be really, really difficult in an endgame situation where it's like last mon Registeel, or you have a Registeel against a team that no longer has a phaser. Rollout is unironically a pretty good move for Registeel. I mean, you've probably seen Rollout on that gym video if you've watched it. You've probably seen Rollout on a Salamence set if you're watching Zets like you ought to be. That was a really funny game. And Rollout is kind of nice for Registeel because even with its boost, it's liable to underperform in damage output. Whereas Rollout, if it gets through its cycle, on that 4th and that 5th rollout, you're going to be doing tons of damage. And that stacks, of course, with your curse boosts. So that's really nice. Another thing that matters for that a lot is PP. So the way that rollout works, let me see how much PP it is. I think it's 16. Rock Slide is 16. It's not what I wanted. Rollout. Rock out. I can't spell. Rollout. Actually, it's 32 PP, that's just egregious. But what's even more egregious about it, Rollout locks you into using it for 5 turns, or until you miss. It's a 90% accurate move, so it could miss. But while you're locked into the sequence, I believe it only uses 1 PP at a time. So in theory, if you never miss, you're actually getting 160 turns of rollout here. That's a lot. And even if you're up against a pressure Pokemon, cut that in half. Potentially 80 turns of rollout. Now, it's never going to work out that way because you're going to miss a rollout at some point. But, like, that's really, really good for PP stalling. So I think that there's a lot of use case for rollout on Registeel, even if you're not going to drop Earthquake for Amnesia, which you don't necessarily have to. You just have to be diligent about removing special attackers into the end game. Like, rollout is like Registeel makes rollout look like a legitimately usable move. That's for sure. And I would recommend that as a potential instead of Hidden Power Steel or Rock Slide. Now, Hidden Power Steel is still nice because it gives you that stab. It also is not... nothing is going to be immune to it, but nothing is immune to rock either. So there's still plenty of reason to want to use, say, Rollout there. Which I'm just going to say right now, I think I'd actually prefer Rollout to Rock Slide. Yeah, so this is probably Registeel's best set. But you do need a team to support it because it's not going to just win on its own. There are plenty of Pokemon that can stop this from doing its thing early. And you're going to need to identify that and remove those Pokemon in the early and mid game. But I'm not going to do quite that set. Instead, I'm going to kind of lean into that lead set a little bit more. So this is my sort of variation or my take on the lead set. I have a little bit of attack investment, and this is so that we can guarantee an OHKO on standard Moltres. And we should always live a modest Fire Blast from Moltres after 3 spikes, provided that we get 1 turn of leftovers healing. Why do I mention that? Like, that seems like a very strange thing. Well, say we switch a full health Registeel into 3 spikes after we lost a Pokemon to Moltres, or if we get roared into the Registeel, then the turn is going to play out such that we get leftovers healing. So we're going to take the spikes damage, but then chip in with our leftovers healing. At that stage, we should live a Fire Blast from Moltres always, which allows us to get our explosion off on it. Now, does that mean you should switch your Registeel into Moltres because it's a Moltres counter? Absolutely not, because you are not living 2 fire moves, generally speaking. And I should note that that is achievable simply with 100 SPDEF investment. So you have 72 EVs that you could be playing with if you want to put them in defense instead, or if you want a stronger boom, then that's fine as well. Instead, I'm going to go the whole hog, which I think actually we might just be able to technically switch in to Moltres on 3 layers of spikes, taking a Fire Blast. However, I still don't recommend doing that because you're going to be outsped by Moltres unless it's already paralyzed. So, like, you're just going to die on the next turn anyway. So, yeah, no, you're not a Moltres switch. But if Moltres comes in, you can boom it. I also want to note that with 32 attack EVs, we are somewhat... It's possible that we could OHKO Blissey 37.5%. That's where you might want to have a little bit more attack investment. I acknowledge that that could be really useful, but if sand is up, then Blissey's more likely to die. I'll acknowledge that we actually don't have sand on the team that I'm about to show, but if you want to use this sort of idea for your team, or if you're playing against a team that has sand and a Blissey, which is pretty common, then keep that in mind. You also might be able to get your Seismic Toss off. In fact, I think this might be worth looking at the calculator for. Forgive me if I'm stalling out here on some explanation, but you did click on a video about stall, so I don't know what you expect. 32 with the explosion. And we're in against, we'll say, a Modest Blissey. I think this is, of course, a Modest Blissey calc. Bold Blissey is going to just be immune to damage, period. But that's not entirely true. But sometimes it feels like it. So keep in mind here, Explosion is going to deal 588 damage minimum with this. That's raw damage, and that's important because Seismic Toss will deal 100. But also keep in mind that Blissey's going to have leftovers. So a 16th of its health stat, so 651 divided by 16. That is 40. So it's going to heal 40% back. So you'll deal 60 damage with every Seismic Toss after leftovers healing is accounted for. So 60 plus your 588. That will give you 648 damage, which Blissey has a HP stat, if it doesn't invest any EVs into it, of 651. So Seismic Toss plus Boom is going to kill Blissey every time unless you get the minimum possible roll on Explosion, which, alright, that's reasonable. Maybe an argument that you want to have one more tick of attack. In fact, I'm going to recommend that right now. Steal 4 EVs from the attack or the speed and put it into this attack right now. I'm gonna I'm gonna change that actually in the paste below. Should have done a little bit more research and testing into that, but I think you're ultimately going to be fine. I'm going to have a Dugtrio on this team just for reference, so if Registeel ever gets into a situation where I boom and I don't kill the Blissey, then Dugtrio is going to follow up there. But for 4 EVs, this is totally worth it, actually, for Seismic Toss plus Boom to get the kill on Modest Blissey. Now, we also have Counter here. This set is a little funny because you have counter explosion. You might be thinking like, wouldn't you want another move like that could possibly hit Gengar? But I'm just gonna tell you right now, this Registeel's so weak, you're not getting anything out of coverage. So I think I'd rather have counter because you might be able to get a sneaky kill on some things. So CB Metagross Earthquake, we will survive that, and we can get the counter off on that. +2 Curselax EQ. We will also live that and kill back. BKC-tar, which is the physically bulky physical attacker. It's Focus Punch. We should live that and we'll counter. Remember, Focus Punch is a -3 priority move. Counter is a -6. So Focus Punch will hit before counter does. Metacham Brick Break, we will usually live and be able to counter. Not always, though. An Adamant Metacham, I believe with Choice Band, will sometimes get the roll to kill us. Let me check that. That's right. So it is 75% likely with Adamant Choice Band. If you're Jolly instead, it's about a 20% chance to get the OHKO. And I'll just be honest, I don't like Adamant Choice Band Metacham. I think that's just too much. Jolly Choice Band Metacham I think is a little bit more reasonable. But we're still decently likely to survive that. Just for the people who want to know, if you have, looks like 36 defense EVs, we can always live a Brick Break from a Jolly banded Metacham. So if you want to have that, that's totally reasonable. You can steal a little bit from the special defense, but note that the more that we take from the special defense, the less we're going to be good into Pokemon like Suicune and Zapdos that we might want to boom or Seismic Toss down on. So, keep that in mind. And then HP Fire from Magneton and Mixed Meta is also something that we can counter. This is something that I think a lot of people still don't know about this generation. For the sake of determining whether you can counter or mirror coat something, every hidden power is considered a normal type move, i.e. it's considered a physical move. Now, again, it's not always calculated as a physical move. If it is, say, HP Grass is going to calculate damage as if it's a special move, but the game thinks that it's a physical move, so that's why counter will work on it. And that's important to note because some Pokemon, their best move to hit Registeel is a hidden power. In Magneton's case, Magneton should be going for Thunderbolt. That does more damage and has a para chance. But some people, again, still don't know this generation and will be clicking HP Fire into a Steel type, not realizing that Thunderbolt does the same damage, if not slightly more. So, yeah, but Mixed Meta is legit. Its only move that it can really hit you with is HP Fire, and you can beat down on Mixed Meta for doing that. So even the Special Metagross set doesn't get away from counter, which is really funny. We have enough speed to take on Blissey, as well as a -speed Swampert or Tyranitar. Blissey's the really important one because being faster than it means we can get our boom off on it so that it can't play around us by spamming Soft Boiled. So yeah, say we Seismic Toss and then Blissey does not go for exactly Soft Boiled, then we have the Explosion follow up there. So that's really good for us. And that's why I think it's worth to go a little bit faster on these Explosion Registeel sets. But it's also not very common that the Blissey's going to stay in. I guess maybe if you reveal the other 3 moves, they might think you don't have Explosion for some reason, or if they're in a situation where Explosion is going to kill anything, then this is still really good. But let's take a look at how we could use that against some of the common leads. So I always say that there are 6 common leads in this format. As the metagame is modernizing, there are definitely some other ones that I won't talk about, like Metacham and Aerodactyl and Breloom, for example, as decently common leads. Jinx, another one. But the way I see it is there are some really common team structures, and they tend to lead with one of these 6. So like this will give you a pretty good breakdown on those matchups. As for like the fighting types, for example, no, Registeel's not good into those, so please just switch. But against Tyranitar, generally it's okay to fish for T-Wave para. Even an Adamant Lum Tyranitar will not OHKO you with a +1 EQ. And if you have Dugtrio on your team, which I will have on mine, you can follow up with that to get the kill on Tyranitar if it manages to break through your Registeel. And you appreciate getting the guaranteed chip from Seismic Toss onto Tyranitar, because you want to make sure that a 252 Tyranitar is still in range for Dugtrio to get the kill. And my sort of thought process is you want a T-Wave. That can cripple the Tyranitar for later in the game. And if it has Lumberry and it got its boost, then you can get Seismic Toss damage. If it kills your Registeel and the Tyranitar is only at +1, Dugtrio should still outspeed. If it goes for +2, you could be a little bit in a pickle. I'm not gonna lie. But Tyranitar also has to deal with, well, what if Registeel has superpower, or what if Registeel uses counter and I don't kill it? So there's a little bit of issues in there. You can also just kind of counter spam into Tyranitar, but Special Tyranitar and DD Tyranitar have counterplay. So Special Tyranitar can just Fire Blast, and that will do pretty significant damage, possibly get a burn, and counter is not getting you anything in return. And DD-Tar could just DD up to +3 or +4 and get a one-shot kill with Earthquake. So at some point you're going to have to do something else against that. But if you're up against, say, BKC-Tar, then clicking counter is exactly the play that you want to make. So there's a little bit of variance there, but generally I go for T-Wave on turn 1. Skarmory, I generally like to T-Wave and then S-Toss to beat it down, but because of that, an S-Toss is going to be like a 4-hit KO on Skarmory. Skarmory's probably going to get all 3 layers up. So that means that if you're going to do that strategy, you're going to have to be ready to spin later. So, like, with this particular Registeel set, I super duper recommend that you have a spinner to go with it. I have one in mind, and we'll see that when I show the team. So, yeah. Metagross. Metagross, you can pretty easily just counter spam into it. Metagross does not have a move that can both threaten a 2-hit KO and not earn an OHKO back by getting countered. Even the special Metagross sets, although Hidden Power Fire is not going to 2-hit KO Registeel. So, yeah, that's pretty good. You'll also live Explosion. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll live Explosion from full. So it's not that big a deal to just like go for counter. If you get boomed on, all right, whatever. You killed the Metagross. You took the damage that you were gonna accept anyway from taking an Earthquake. So, like, that's great. In fact, Registeel is probably one of the best, and this particular Registeel set is one of the best counters to Metagross in the format. So I think that's really nice. You can also T-Wave it if you want, but sometimes lead Metagross is Lumberry. So you might not get as much value out of it, and just getting the counter off while it's going for Earthquake is great. It's a good thing that Metagross doesn't have like Bulk Up or Curse or Swords Dance to play around this, because yeah, it just has to attack. So that's you're getting the counter off for sure. Zapdos. So ideally, it would be great to T-Wave Zapdos, but you need to S-Toss to stop Zapdos from getting a sub. So against most lead Zapdos, I would generally just S-Toss on the first turn, and if they don't go for Substitute, then you can go for T-Wave on the next turn. But also keep in mind that Zapdos when it realizes that it's not going to do anything to Registeel, oftentimes they're going to switch, and Swampert is a very common switch. And going for T-Wave into Swampert does nothing, whereas S-Toss at least gets a little bit of chip damage off. So there's still an argument that you might just want to S-Toss spam against Zapdos anyway. If you get T-Waved by Zapdos, that's not ideal, but Registeel would rather be paralyzed than burned, so I think you can accept that. And if you're going to trade T-Waves with Zapdos, it's much better for you, usually, to get T-Waved on Registeel than it is for them to get T-Waved on Zapdos. So that's kind of good to know. We don't have a Rock-type move with our Registeel, so we're not really threatening to kill the Zapdos, per se, but S-Toss is sufficient for breaking the substitute. Salamence. So most Menses are going to die to Explosion, and you don't have to worry about Intimidate because of Clear Body, so that's actually really nice. And T-Wave is usually pretty safe, because Salamence, I mean, I've seen some Lumberry Salamence running around on ladder, but I just do not like that set. I think Leftovers is way better. So, yeah. That's good to know, but counter can be really good to trade into a CB or a DD Mence. At +1, Salamence can 2-hit KO with Earthquake. If it's not +1 though, I think it's falling short of the 2-hit KO, so that's actually good to know, so that you can T-Wave and then go for counter if you would like. So, yeah, again, good to know. And Suicune is probably the toughest for this Registeel set to handle. Explosion can deal up to 85% or 88.5% to an offensive Suicune, but defensive variants can take as little as 48% from Boom. And then S-Toss and T-Wave are basically just useless into sub-variants of Suicune. So yeah, like, Suicune's tough. You're probably going to have to switch, and you're probably going to want to have a Suicune answer on a Registeel team. Speaking of that, let's get into the team. I've wasted almost an hour just talking about this, but you know what? I think that this has been pretty informative, so I hope you think the same. So this is a team that I'm calling Registeel. So we have a lead Registeel here to threaten T-Wave on opposing leads, and we have ideas to beat Skarmory, Metagross, and Magneton on the switch. Even if the Magneton user wisens up and goes for T-Bolt into Registeel rather than HP Fire, Seismic Toss is a 3-hit KO on Magneton, and if you somehow have a Spike up, you can oftentimes 2-hit KO Magneton after the Spike damage, so that's pretty good. Milotic and Blissey are here to form a sturdy, status-resistant core. Milotic, obviously, it's got Marvel Scale, so it kind of doesn't mind getting status against Fizz-off teams. It also has Refresh, though, to get rid of the status if you are not wanting that, which, yeah, you don't want to have Toxic forever. And you want to use both of these Pokemon to harass Suicune, because otherwise Suicune is going to exploit the passivity of this team. The idea with Blissey is that you're Calm Mind, and Calm Mind Blissey is actually pretty decent into Suicune. The problem is if Suicune is Roar, you may have to play for a Last Mon Blissey situation, in which case you want to be very proactive about taking out the rest of the enemy's Pokemon, because Last Mon Blissey, Calm Mind, can beat Last Mon Suicune because of Thunderbolt and Blissey's enormous Spadef stat, but Blissey's not gonna 1v6 most teams, or it's not gonna 1v6 any team that's any good. There are some teams that are really bad that Blissey can 1v6, but those teams are really bad. So, Dugtrio on this team primarily wants to eliminate Tyranitar. Yes, it's good to eliminate Blissey as well, but this team can stall out Blissey decently well. Like, worst case scenario, we can probably PP stall a Blissey. And Milotic, but with Toxic, against a Last Mon Blissey, like, you're fine. You can just Toxic it, and then you can wait for the Blissey to die. So while, yeah, Blissey can stop, it can impede the progress of a lot of these Pokemon. They can't beat Blissey one-on-one. Um, the combination of them and us just switching around and forcing the Blissey to run out of PP is totally fine. So, Dugtrio, you want to eliminate Tyranitar much more than you want to eliminate Blissey. And the reason being is that we can use that elimination of Tyranitar to facilitate Claydol to go for Rain Dance. So I know I'm doing back-to-back Weather Clear. I didn't think I would do that either, but this team is not super duper weak to sand, but there are some endgame situations where if you can clear the weather, Blissey and Milotic will just blow the game wide open. So I think that it's kind of worth doing Rain Dance on Claydol here. If you would prefer, you can switch that back for Explosion, or you could have like Rock Slide or Refresh or Rest even instead. There are a lot of options in that last move slot, but I think I kind of like the Weather Clear idea, so I'm running with it. Skarmory and Milotic can both spread Toxics to win on passive damage. This is kind of a TSS. It's almost a TSS structure. We don't have the sand at all, but we can kind of use our opponent's sand sometimes. I know that I said that Claydol can clear the weather, but I think that's kind of what's interesting about this team is that sometimes you actually prefer to have the sand up because your opponent's team is worse into sand than you are. We have 4 sand immunities, so the weather clear is really only for Milotic and Blissey, and you're really only going to want to do that in certain endgame situations, particularly like if you have to deal with a Gengar, and Gengar is going to be a common switch to Claydol to block Spike's removal, then Rain Dancing on the switch to Gengar can be really nice because 1, they can't stop that, and 2, if there's no sand, Blissey's a lot better into Gengar than it would be otherwise. I mean, it's still pretty good regardless, but yeah. I want to note that this team is going to have to find some crafty Dugtrio switches to make progress against certain teams. Sometimes you're going to be up against, say, like a Fortress, and Fortress is stalling out your progress. You don't have a Fire-type move on this team to hit the Fortress, which is maybe an argument for why you might want to run, like, maybe Flamethrower on Blissey over, I guess maybe Ice Beam, but I don't know. Like, Ice Beam Blissey's so good. So yeah, like, you're gonna have to find some crafty situations for Dugtrio to come in and eliminate something. Fortress maybe is one example. Tyranitar is a big example. You want to bait the Tyranitar to go for something other than Earthquake or Focus Punch, and then get the Dugtrio in to handle it. So, I think that Claydol is actually really good with Dugtrio for that reason. I think if you read Claydol's Smogon write-up, one of the things that it says is it likes to have Dugtrio because Pursuit Tyranitar will come in to try to eliminate the Claydol. Then you allow Claydol to get pursuited so you can switch to Dugtrio and get the easy elimination there. So that's actually a really interesting synergy that I don't know how much you guys are thinking about that. But another thing is that for physical Tyranitar, they're going to want to click HP Bug into Claydol, and HP Bug is pretty much never going to kill Dugtrio unless it crits. So like, Dugtrio is a pretty safe switch into Tyranitar if you're switching from Claydol. Now, from like your Registeel, no, do not switch straight to Dugtrio from Registeel. Reason being that Registeel deals with Tyranitar pretty easily on its own. Second thing is that if Tyranitar is attacking Registeel, it's clicking Earthquake or Focus Punch, which are the danger moves that can one-shot Dugtrio. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I want to note as well, memorize the 6 on this team. This team is actually very similar to another standard team that you probably have heard of before, and if you haven't, you're going to hear about it right now. This is called Version 5. The reason why it's called Version 5 is the player that built this team, I believe their name is Kurtz, was playing on an alt called Virgin something or other. And people looked at this team, that they climbed the ladder with, and was like, wow, this is really cool. There are 5 Pokemon on this team, which would be Blissey, Milo, Scarm, Claydol, and Dugtrio, that form like a really solid 5 that can kind of just play on their own. So it's almost like Big 5, but like a stall variation. And then Suicune is on here as the sort of 6th Pokemon. A lot of people will swap Suicune out for Tyranitar to have like a TSS type stall, which is really, really interesting. But if you look at my team, we basically have Registeel instead of Suicune, and we move the Registeel to the top. Now, my sets are not exactly the same. I have CM Blissey, for example, rather than this Cleric Blissey. And my Claydol is a little bit different. My Dugtrio is a little bit different. Screech Dugtrio is actually really, really interesting, and I think that might be something I would try in the future, because there are some situations where, say, like Suicune can give some problems to this team, and getting a Screech off could be kind of nice. But that being said, like I don't have Drill Peck on my Scarm, which again maybe I should. I opted for Toxic instead. And other than that, Claydol Earthquake is really the only other like physical attacking move. So I don't know if Screech is super duper necessary. I guess you could be in a situation where Suicune is trying to rest loop you, so you can get Dugtrio in Screech, then switch back to Blissey, try to beat down the Suicune until it has to rest again, and then you get back into Dugtrio, and Dugtrio can finish it off from there. That's probably the idea. But yeah, so I want to show this, one, because it's a team that I think everybody should know about, and 2, it's got some similarities to my team, so we will you can sort of orient yourself on what to expect from this type of team. All right, so let's switch up the music here. Shout outs to Faraway Island, Southern Island, Mirage Island, Abandoned Ship. Really underrated track from Pokemon Emerald, but let's talk about an underrated track from one of my favorite games of all time here. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team. Buried Relic, one of the coolest dungeons in all of the Mystery Dungeon series. 100 floor, well, 99 floor dungeon. Has some hidden stuff in the walls. I don't know if you knew that, but like dig into the walls in that game and you will find like status boosting items, or stat boosting items, I should say, which is really, really cool. All right, enough about me gushing about Mystery Dungeon. I will save that for another video. We're here to talk about some battles, all right? So, let me switch the scene real quick. That's not the right one. There we go. Beautiful Registeel up in the top right corner. I've seen some of you say that you don't like this OBS layout, and like that's fair, and I'm definitely willing to change it. But I'm gonna need some suggestions, because like I don't know what to do all on my own. Maybe I can make like a border for this, so that we don't see like this weird Pokemon Showdown beta stuff going on up there. So I could try something like that, but I'm gonna need some suggestions if you want me to change this. If you like this the way that it is, you can also comment that as well. But let's go here. Albatross on my neck, I feel like is a player I end up featuring a lot on this channel. For better or for worse, Albatross on my neck, if you're watching, comment down below, and I'll give you a shout out. But here we go. Lead Scarm, lead Registeel. So I'm generally going to take the T-Wave here, but this happens to be a lead Taunt Skarmory, so that's not great for me. I just wasted a turn. But a turn that I waste going for T-Wave is a turn that they waste not getting a Spike Up, so that's good to know. Also, keep in mind, Seismic Toss, you know exactly how much damage it's going to deal. It's 100 every time. So against Skarmory, against Standard Skarm, we should be doing exactly 29.9% with Seismic Toss. So we did a lot more than that. So that tells me that the Skarmory, in fact, does not have any HP investment, and that would explain, so 37%, 36%, whatever. There's some weird rounding that goes on. If it's 0 HP Scarm, we should be dealing 36.9%, and that kind of explains this 36-37 split that we're seeing. So in fact, this is that was a no HP Skarmory, probably YOLO Skarm. So yeah, keep that in mind. Skarmory will still survive three Seismic Tosses if it has leftovers. So that's why if you're doing the offensive Skarmory or YOLO Skarm, that's why I would generally recommend still doing like leftovers, maybe with Adamant Nature, rather than going for the Soft Sand variant. Soft Sand presents tons of problems for Skarmory. It loves to get the chip healing for leftovers, so I would generally recommend just doing leftovers. Although it is interesting that this Skarm doesn't have Drill Peck, presumably. Or maybe it's dropping HP ground, but I don't know why you would run a really fast Skarm with no HP investment if you're not HP ground to hit the Magneton. So it might have dropped Drill Peck for probably Roar. So that's kind of interesting. I have Blissey in. I'm going to Ice Beam into the Skarm. Instead, we're going to get a switch to Tyranitar, and it reveals to have no item. So that means either Choice Band or Lumberry. I'm going to go to Claydol, who should be decently fine into either, and I'm going to go for Rapid Spin. The Gengar comes in. I'm going to trade a Psychic here to get some damage on the Gengar, but I'm going to switch. I do not want to take the kill on Gengar because a lot of times these Gengar that are willing to Ice Punch into the Claydol have Destiny Bond or Explosion. In either case, Registeel covers both options, and I can go for a T-Wave here. Most likely, Destiny Bond is... It's not completely impossible for it to be Taunt Destiny Bond, but I find that Destiny Bond is not super commonly running Taunt, so Thunder Wave is pretty free for me, but instead we get a Swampert switch, which is not great. So Registeel's not really... Registeel's kind of getting the worst of a lot of these worlds, and we see an Endeavor Swampert here. I can tell it's Endeavor Swampert because it has Substitute, high, well, not high HP. You don't know what its HP stat is. Usually it's actually pretty low. It has Substitute and no leftovers. That tells you that it's Endeavor. So against Endeavor Swampert, we're going to have to switch around. I think Milotic is going to be the lifeline here because Hydro Pump is not going to do that much to Milotic. We're getting roared around on the Spike. It's a little bit annoying, but at least it's only one Spike, and everything on this team has ways to chip heal or to recover. It's important to note when you're determining how weak your team is into sand. Look at all the Pokemon that take sand damage and ask yourself, do they have recovery? And in the case of this team, the answer is actually yes. The Soft Boil Blissey and Recover Milotic, the only things that get hit by sand damage, they can just recover themselves. So the way that I chose to play this, I'm actually playing to sack the Milotic here, kind of. I can just go for Recover looping, which would run this Swampert out of Endeavors eventually. So it's going to have to go for Roar. It goes for Roar, gets me into Registeel, and at this stage, I'm looking at my Registeel and I'm looking at this team, and I'm like, you know, Registeel is not going to get that much more value. This is probably like a big 5 team, so last mons are probably Blissey and maybe Zapdos. Yeah, probably, because this is like a really offensive variation of Big 5. So Registeel is not going to be that particularly good into the rest of the team. So I'm actually willing to just sack this to the Endeavor Pert. Seismic Toss should break the sub. And Pert could, in theory, run max HP. Go to 404 and not have its substitute broken, but there are problems with that. The biggest problem is that it's divisible by 4, So 4 substitutes would, in theory, kill you. I guess in this generation, well, and maybe every generation, in fact. If you try to go for a substitute and you don't have the HP to make it, then it will fail. So, in fact, because of that, Swampert is not going to run max HP on its Endeavor sets. So, this is actually a worry that you don't need to have. The Swampert is going to fortunately miss its Hydro Pump, which means that my Registeel actually gets another turn to do something, potentially. Unless the Gengar has Fire Punch to kill me, which it does. The idea there is if the Swampert killed my Registeel, I could have went to Dugtrio and gotten the easy kill on it so that it wouldn't be able to Endeavor anything else on my team. I had some options. I could have maybe sacked some Skarmory HP if I would prefer to do that for whatever reason. But we're gonna abuse this YOLO Skarm, or this offensive Skarm, for some healing on my on my Blissey. I'll go for a Ice Beam. Ice Beam should kill the Skarmory. It will also do decent damage to to Tyranitar. And I'm going to switch immediately to my Dugtrio on the Tyranitar. So that's sort of the turn where it's like you need to make a play. And I think that having revealed Claydol, it seems pretty likely that my opponent would try to play around the Claydol switch, meaning that they're going to go for HP Ghost, HP Bug. So Dugtrio can come in, take that pretty easily, and then get the kill for me. And now we're kind of in the driver's seat here. I've got 2 spikes up. Gengar is pretty likely going to die to many of my Pokemon, and when that happens, I can spin the spike away, and then my opponent's progress is just going to stall out here. So here comes a Metagross, in fact. That kind of makes sense for this team. And Jolteon last. Interesting. So almost Big 5, but not quite. My Milotic is very, very important for Metagross. I can't lose my Milotic until Metagross is dead, or I need to put it in range of Dugtrio Earthquake. So I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that this Metagross can stay low. Getting the 3rd layer of spikes is really important there. And now I'm into Claydol on this Skarm. I get Drill Pecked for my troubles here, but predicting a switch to Gengar, I'm going to go for Rain Dance. And I value Rain Dance in this situation because I'm going to get more out of chip healing on my Blissey and my Milotic than my opponent is going to get out of chip healing on Gengar and Jolteon. Those are both pretty frail and going to die to most of the moves that I have at this stage. And Jolteon in particular is going to take a lot of spikes damage. So it's not going to be able to chip heal up and then be able to switch around so much. So in this case, that's why I want to get the Weather Clear off. And I'm going to stay in and go for Rapid Spin, because if this Skarmory is not switching, then I will just undo all the progress. And at this stage, my opponent's going to forfeit, which I guess that makes sense. Like, I'm going to go to Blissey. I'm going to be able to T-Bolt / Ice Beam to threaten the Skarm pretty well. Gengar is not long for this world. Trading, as long as I don't lose my Milotic to Gengar, I'm probably just going to win the game. That would be my opponent's win con, basically, is for Gengar to kill the Milotic. So, not so unreasonable for the forfeit there. There's a little jump scare there. Let's go on to the next game here. So another lead Skarmory. I'm always going for T-Wave. I don't care if you're taunting me. The reason why I go for T-Wave here, why I recommend it, even against like a standard Skarm, you're going to take however many hits to kill with Seismic Toss anyway. But if you T-Wave, you flip the turn order. So now you'll be attacking first. So you're not giving Skarmory any extra turns for a spike to go for T-Wave. And you have a 25% chance that they'll get fully parried like this. Which means that they will not be able to get an additional spike per se. So it's just, for me, it's an easy value proposition to get the T-Wave off there. I actually got 2 turns of full para, which is really nice. My opponent was trying to go for Protect to get some chip healing, and it didn't work out for them. They did get 1 turn there, which was important. They needed to get at least 1 to survive an additional Seismic Toss. But unfortunately, they get full parried again and again, trying to go for Protect. Although that one I don't think mattered that much, because they would have needed to get like a triple Protect to get out of Seismic Toss range. So that's actually totally fine. Against this Tyranitar, I don't know what Tyranitar it is, so I'm going to go for T-Wave, trying to make sure that it doesn't get to DD up and win. Even if it is a Lumberry Tyranitar, it shouldn't be able to kill me with 1 hit at +1. So I can get the T-Wave off on the 2nd hit, and now it's going to be slower than my entire team. But given that damage, I think it's actually a Choice Band Tyranitar. Actually, no. If it's Choice Band Tyranitar, Focus Punch should be killing me. Good to know, good to know. So it's actually probably a BKC-tar. Yeah, that lines up. So I get the T-Wave off on the BKC-tar. But my Registeel is really low. There are 2 layers of spikes up. I might be able to spin and get the Registeel back into the game, but at this point, I think it's actually more worth it for me to get the Explosion off, which gives me a guaranteed switch to Dugtrio, and Dugtrio should kill every Tyranitar from 68%. Crit didn't matter. Jolteon comes in. So Jolteon coming in tells me that it definitely is going to go for a hidden power. I can go to Claydol, who should be resilient enough to take the hidden power. They're going to BP to Gengar, and kind of figuring that that's what was going to happen. I mean, this, again, is looking a little bit like a TSS Big 5 type structure. I'm going to go for the Rain Dance, and the Rain Dance is great because Tyranitar is gone, so I don't have to worry about the sand coming back up. If Gengar comes in, then it's not going to blank my Rapid Spin. I could have maybe tried to predict the Gengar going for Psychic, but once again, I'm not generally wanting Claydol to 1v1 Gengar. Gengar has too many tricks up its sleeve to stop that. With the Blissey, I'm going to go for an Ice Beam here. Does a decent amount of damage, but because I'm in Explosion range, I'm going to switch the Blissey out, and I do catch the Explosion there. Very good. This is looking great for me. Jolteon is in, but Jolteon cannot do anything to Blissey. Roar would have been its best click there, if it knew that I was going to go for Blissey, but can't always know. This is starting to look very familiar to the previous team, now that I'm looking at it. Interesting. It's not exactly the same. The sets are slightly different, but I think these 5 were on the other team, so this Metagross is missing all of its Meteor Mashes, which is unfortunate because Choice Band Metagross could be pretty good at beating down Skarmory, but I can just cycle Protect and Spikes. Spikes is going to be really important because most likely this team doesn't have a spinner, and if it does, the spinner is most likely Starmie, and I'd rather just get the damage on Starmie. But because my opponent missed so many Meteor Mashes, I'm able to get 3 layers of Spikes and a Roar, which is very, very good. And we do reveal the Starmie here. It might be able to go for a Rapid Spin. In fact, they're going to go for Hydro Pump, which is kind of whatever. I view this as I can either get T-Bolt damage on Starmie, or I can force the Jolteon to switch in. If the Jolteon switches in, then I'm still fine. Jolteon can't do anything to Blissey. And if it goes for a Rapid Spin, I'm going to get that T-Bolt damage off to put in a lot of work. So I think once again, I'm actually going to take a Soft Boiled that turn. I probably could have went for T-Bolt. That would have been, if Starmie stays into Rapid Spin or whatever it wants to do, that would have been great. It would have gotten some damage on Metagross, but it was kind of unnecessary because all I needed to do, because 3 layers of Spikes were up, was sack the Skarm, and then Dugtrio can get the kill. Jolteon comes in and crits with Hidden Power, which shouldn't matter if it's if it's a standard Jolteon, but Claydol can come in. It will live any hit that the Starmie will go. The Jolteon will go for, kill with Earthquake, and then the Starmie is dead to the 3 layers of spikes. So it's a pretty simple end game there. I didn't even have to reveal my Milotic at all, which is great. You may have heard me espouse some Milotic hate, and I generally don't like the Mon. I think it's got some problems, but I think this team kind of highlights some strengths that it possibly has. But if the Milotic doesn't have to hit the field, then that's just great for me. Shrekila with a lead Cloyster. Same concept as a Skarmory. I'm just going to T-Wave it. And in fact, Cloyster is kind of better for me because it's generally going to be less HP invested than Skarmory is going to be. I can get a 3-shot with Seismic Toss, which is great because if I get a full turn of Para, then it's not going to be able to get 3 layers of spikes up. And then Explosion from the Cloyster is not going to do anything. I actually end up against another Endeavorpert, which is really, really interesting. I can go for Protect here because there's nothing that the Swampert can do to punish the Protect, and I can steal another PP from it. The problem with Endeavorpert into these stall-ish teams is that they are threatening to run you out of your Hydro Pumps and Endeavors, and yeah, you can roar around, which is great synergy with a lead Spiker. I think that's really nice, but Roar's not going to win the game outright. Most of these Pokemon are either going to be Spikes immune or have Recover to undo the Spikes damage, so it just prolongs the inevitable where this Swampert is not going to be able to sweep the team. Now the problem is if you roar me into Dugtrio too many times, then I might lose my Dugtrio, which would suck. So that's not great. Against the Swampert there, let me check this calc. I don't know this calc off the top of my head, but I didn't think I would get the kill, and I don't want to risk losing my Dugtrio so early just to get damage on Swampert, which might not even matter. So yeah, I'm doing 56 to 66 to a standard Endpert. So I would not have killed there. So keep that in mind. If it goes for another substitute, and I happen to be in a situation where I remove the substitute and I get roared into Dugtrio, then I can get the kill. But as it stands, it was not worth it for me to go for that. This Swampert is down to 4 Hydro Pumps, so that's important to note as well. It's going to roar again. Against this, I think I'm going to go for Ice Beam to break the sub. If I get roared into Dugtrio, then I will remove the Swampert and, like, basically the game's over. But instead I get roared into Milotic, so I think I'm just going to play to essentially go down to 1 HP on the Milotic, except I'm going to make a gamer move here. I'm going to go to the Dugtrio, hard predicting that the Swampert goes for Endeavor, and because I'm max speed Dugtrio, I should always outspeed the Swampert. Now, if the opponent gamed me there and went for Hydro Pump, I would have lost my Dugtrio, and then I would have had to go to Milotic, or maybe, potentially Registeel. I would have to go to something that would have taken an Endeavor, went down to 1 HP. Yes, I killed the Swampert off, but pretty much everything on this team is going to threaten to kill back. So the Swampert effectively would have traded 2 for 1. But I make that aggressive Dugtrio play so that I don't have to trade. I'm up the exchange. And a 1% Dugtrio is either going to be a Spike Sack, or I might be able to get the Claydol and preserve the Dugtrio, because the Dugtrio HP doesn't really matter. It just matters that the Dugtrio is alive. So Zapdos goes for Substitute here. I'm going to risk that my opponent Baton passes to Gengar and go for a Rapid Spin. My opponent does not opt to do that. Instead, they're going to go to Suicune. And I'm going to go immediately to Skarmory so I can roar that away so that Suicune doesn't start causing problems for me. but in fact, my opponent's going to roar me. I get into Dugtrio here, and I figured that Dugtrio's best use case here is going to be to eliminate the substitute from the Suicune so that Blissey can get the 1v1. So I'm willing to sack the Dugtrio there. But, like, note how good that Dugtrio play was for me, that I was able to eliminate the Swampert and preserve so that I could destroy the substitute here. So now my Blissey can 1v1 the Suicune. So against this particular Suicune, which I am assuming is, I don't know if it's called Vincune. It's like it's the defensive Calm Mind Suicune that has substitute instead of rest. As long as I stay within one stage of the Suicune, my Thunderbolt should break the Suicune sub. So I'm gonna try to make plays to keep the Suicune low, and then, or as low as possible before the Suicune opts to roar my Blissey out. I'm gonna go to Registeel here to Seismic Toss twice to break the substitute. It's not ideal, but Registeel can outpace the Leftovers recovery by going for Seismic Tosses. So I'm willing to do that. Now here there's an argument that I maybe could have went for Explosion. Since I'm probably going to lose the Registeel to the Suicune anyway, and then Blissey can come in and finish off with T-Bolt most of the time. Sometimes, like, there's some rolls where it will not finish off the Suicune. But I instead opt to go for Seismic Tosses. If my opponent got greedy and went for another Calm Mind there, he would have lost the Suicune for nothing. But the way that I play this, I end up deciding to sack the Claydol to a Surf there. And now I have Blissey in. Since the Suicune is revealing 25% HP, and important to note that Showdown will always round up on the HP that it displays, I know that it can't go for a substitute because it has at max 25.0% HP, which is not enough to make a substitute. That means I can go for Thunderbolt, which will guarantee that the Suicune will be lower than what is required to make another sub, which means that now I kind of have a little bit of a dealer's choice if I go for Thunderbolt again or Calm Mind. Calm Mind would be great if my opponent goes for Surf. It would be not great if my opponent goes for Roar. So I'm going to take the roll here for Thunderbolt to kill. I don't get it, but I get I get a para, which means that I will outspeed and kill the Suicune there, which is great. Granted, I would have went down to, like, low HP, still killed the Suicune, but Tyranitar could have came in and probably killed me with Sandstorm. And because I don't have my Dugtrio anymore, I'm a little bit in a tough spot. I'm going to go hard my Lodic against Tyranitar, who should take a Surf or a Rock Slide pretty nicely. And I can go for Surf, which will hit everything. Because Sand is up, Zapdos is not going to be able to heal its way out of this one. And this Metagross reveals to be, in fact, a mixed meta, which makes sense, because I think that Cloyster's pretty good on these, like, special offense teams. And Metagross is also really good on these special offense teams as a means to beat Blissey, but still provide some special pressure. So against this Metagross, I know it's slower. I'm going to just stack my spikes all the way up. I could have went for a Protect in there, which would have been fine, but I didn't want to give a free turn for Zapdos to switch in. And I know that my Registeel is going to be really good against this Metagross as I counter and deal a lot of damage there. My opponent is kind of shocked. They didn't realize that I could counter the HP Fire, but I let them know. Let the nephews know. That's my motto here. Which kind of forces the Metagross to go for Boom to finish off my Registeel, because otherwise I would have got another counter to kill the Metagross, and my opponent would have got nothing for it, and then I could have boomed on something else. I go for an Ice Beam to break the substitute that is passed to Tyranitar, and at this point I think I'm going to lose the game. The reason why I think I'm going to lose the game is because my Lodic versus +1 Tyranitar, in theory, wins, right? You don't even get 2-hit KO'd by Rock Slide. and Surf should kill from this range. Problem is flinch chance, and my Milotic just seems to always get flinched. And I'm like, what's going to happen here is I'm going to get flinched twice, and I'm going to lose the game. But I don't really have another play. I have to go to my Milotic because Blissey is just going to lose. And if I lose Blissey, then I'll lose to Zapdos. So I have to go to my Milotic here. I get Rock Slided, and I get my Surf off. So very lucky for me. I mean, I know that it's technically in my favor for that outcome to happen. And they would have had to crit or flinch on the second Rock Slide to even win the game. But man, Milotic always ends up in that situation, and Milotic, I feel like Milotic loses it a lot. So, very fortunate there. My Milotic Slander is saved for another game. Speaking of, let's watch this one last game. Registeel versus Metagross. So lead Metagross we're awesome into. I'm going to go for the counter. Thunder Wave would have been really nice, actually, because I'm going to end up Thunder Waving the Spiker anyway. And then I'm going to Seismic Toss to beat it down. Some of you may not like this idea. Like, I'm allowing almost every Spiker to get 3 layers on me. Which is probably not ideal, but because I have a pretty sturdy team and I have Claydol to spin, I'm kind of okay with letting that happen. Now, against this particular team that has Fortress and Gengar, I'm going to be in some trouble because Claydol does not like to be in versus Fortress. But my opponent will actually go to Tyranitar rather than Gengar, which allows me to spin the hazards away. And they go for Pursuit as I switch to Dugtrio. So those 2 turns, I mean, frankly, this might just lose my opponent the game. Because they're going to lose their whole Tyranitar. And I got rid of all of that progress that the Fortress got, and in exchange, it's at 69% and paralyzed. So, I'm actually in a pretty nice spot. I go for Ice Beam here, trying to catch maybe whatever this Unrevealed is, but also because I have a freeze chance, and like that's the thing with a stall team. When you're gonna play a 100-turn game or so, you're gonna have a lot of chances to fish for a freeze, so you might as well start early is my philosophy. Yeah, T-Bolt would have got me some extra damage there, but I think I'm okay with that. I was thinking that this would be a lead banned Metagross since it didn't reveal an item, but that damage is not suggesting banned to me at all. I'm gonna go for Roar because I don't think it's all that worth it to get so many spikes because Fortress is just gonna spin them away. Although, that being said, I would have gotten extra chip on the Fortress, but I was afraid that the Fortress was going to switch immediately in. And I go to my Milotic to try to beat down the Fortress, and I get a Surf crit and just kill the Fortress straight up, which is really, really nice. I'm actually kind of surprised that a Surf crit would have killed Fortress from there. Maybe it's possible that it's not as Spadef invested as the standard Fortress ought to be. I'm going to go to Skarmory here, who is in Boom range, but I'm going to Protect, and my opponent goes for Boom anyway, so this is really, really nice. That's the thing about Metagross. Because Metagross does not have a move to like boost its stats without clicking Meteor Mash, you're pretty safe to go for Protect against it, with pretty much anything. The only caveat is Agility, but Agility Metagross, I just do not care if it gets the Agility boost on my Skarmory. So I'm fine to go for Protect, and that works out really well for me. And now I'm up 6-3, and pretty much, yeah, they've got some chip on my Claydol, they've got some chip on my Skarmory, but I've removed hazards and their spin and their potentially their Spiker and Spinner. This Starmie might not have Spin. Sometimes you'll see that where the Starmie is going to be like 3 attacks recover or 4 attacks, and then you're going to have Fortress to be the spinner for the team. Sometimes there's double spinner, but like this is just looking like a really, really good end game for me. Against Gengar, I can simply go to Blissey, who's going to tank that Thunderbolt really nicely. Most likely my opponent's going to go to Snorlax here, but I'm just going to take the Thunderbolt damage. This Snorlax has to be exactly rest to not just eventually lose the game. I'm going to go to Registeel on that Snorlax as I catch Gengar switching in. I'm going to go for Thunder Wave because if I Thunder Wave the Gengar, then we're in a pretty nice situation. But Snorlax is going to come in and start cursing. To me, that communicates one of two things. Either the Snorlax has Earthquake, or the Snorlax has Rest, and it thinks that it can beat my Registeel one-on-one. It reveals to have Rest, and it's still possible that it has Earthquake as well. Now, that was kind of unfortunate that it got a crit and a para on my Registeel. That could matter a lot in the end game. But I'm going to Roar the Snorlax out so that it doesn't get too out of hand, and I can use this to fish for some extra healing on my Skarmory. Remember that the Skarmory was below 50%, and I'm able to get it up now to 74%. When it comes back in, it's probably going to be even higher. I'm always going for that Thunder Wave into Gengar. Although I probably could have just went for a Seismic Toss. The worst Gengar can do is just T-Bolt, and like I'm fine to take that damage. But I'm just gonna Seismic Toss into this Snorlax. I get full Parrot here, and now I'm thinking, well, if this Snorlax is gonna do anything to me, it's gonna click a move right now, like Earthquake or potentially like Brick Break. So I'm gonna go for counter. But I get full Parrot again. If I countered, I would have killed this Snorlax and the game would have been over. I would have 6-0'd easily 6-0'd because Blissey just beats the last two. But instead, I'm now going to have to try to play around this Snorlax. Now, things are still okay. I can Roar the Snorlax out, but I get Parrot on Skarmory, so this is getting really, really dicey. Snorlax is introducing variants into this game that could cause me to lose, which is not great. I don't like that. I'll go for T-Bolt. Don't get the para on Snorlax. That's kind of okay, though. Now I'm going to go to Claydol and threaten to Boom. I don't have Boom because I have Rain Dance instead, but my opponent doesn't know that, so they're going to switch to Gengar. I go for Earthquake because if my opponent stays in with the Snorlax, I just want to get damage. Potentially put them into Dugtrio range, because if I can trap the Snorlax with Dugtrio and kill it, then I'll simply just win. I could have also went for Psychic there to catch the Gengar switch, and I would have gotten a little bit of chip on Snorlax, but I don't think I would have gotten enough for Dugtrio to follow up, so that's kind of the rub. Also important to note, because of this situation, I think actually I'm benefiting more from sand than my opponent is. If I clear the sand, then Snorlax becomes even more threatening. So I'm not going to go for Rain Dance with my Claydol here. This would be a situation where Boom would have been better. Because then I have a move to click into the Snorlax, but as it stands, I don't. So I'll Ice Beam. If I get the freeze on Snorlax, I maybe can muscle my way out of this, but instead I'm going to have to go to Skarm to sort of block the Snorlax from doing anything. I get Body Slammed for about 20%, but I'm going to go for Spikes. So my sort of thought here is that if I can force this Starmie in, I might be able to kill the Starmie with, say, Blissey while I'm in against, say, Gengar, as the Starmie is trying to go for a Rapid Spin, if it has it. And if the Starmie doesn't have Rapid Spin, I might be able to start progressing to get 3 layers of Spikes, which is going to limit the amount of things that Snorlax can do. I'm going to go for a Protect here. Again, this is pretty risky. If I get full Parrot, I'm going to lose the Skarm, and then this Snorlax matchup is going to get really dicey. But my sort of thought is that if I need Skarmory to beat this Lax at +2 again, I want to be above 50% HP. So I have to get a protect somewhere. So I opt to just go for it there. Now against the Snorlax, I'm going to get to Registeel, and I'm threatening to Boom. My opponent will go for Earthquake, and it gets the kill. I don't know if that was a roll. Potentially it was, but even if it isn't, then it kind of is what it is. I'm going to go to Claydol, again threatening to Boom. I'm going to go for Earthquake instead, though, as my opponent is going to just simply Body Slam my Claydol. Doesn't quite kill, but I identify that my opponent has to go for Rest there, so I'm going to make an aggressive double to Skarmory, so I can start setting these spikes up. And the fact that my opponent is not hard switching to Starmie to remove these spikes immediately kind of suggests to me that they might not have Rapid Spin. I'm going to go for Roar there to undo Snorlax's progress. I could have got the third layer there, but I think I can get it later, so kind of okay with that. Now I'm going to go to Milotic on the Snorlax, who is pretty healthy, and I can surf the Snorlax down, at least force it to rest. Yes, it's going to get some curse boosts, and yes, that can be scary, but Body Slam is not even going to 2-hit KO me, I don't think. It's pretty close, actually. But I can just go for another surf there. I'm going to die here. Then I go to Dugtrio. I don't quite get the kill, but it's kind of an issue of damned if you do, damned if you don't with the Snorlax, because I would put it in range for Blissey's Ice Beam to kill. And because of the, well, Snorlax is just naturally slower than Blissey, but also because of the speed reduction, I'm going to definitely be faster. Blissey will either kill the Snorlax or catch one of these two switching in. And unless this Starmie has Rapid Spin, Snorlax is dead to spikes on switch. So that was kind of fine for me. If my opponent goes for Rest, I can go to Skarmory, and I have turns to Roar this away, which is what I'm going to do. The Starmie is in. Now I can go to Blissey to stop the Starmie from doing anything. If this Starmie, so the Starmie didn't go for Rapid Spin. If it has Rapid Spin, it better go for it now. And if it did, I had Thunderbolt there to probably kill the Starmie after Sandstorm damage. But since the Snorlax is in and I have a relatively healthy Skarmory, I'm going to come in, and I think I'm going to set the third layer here. And that's great. So eventually the Starmie's going to die. Eventually the Snorlax is going to have to be in a situation. The sort of problem that arises for my team here is if I end up with last Mon Snorlax and I'm not able to roar it away, I might end up losing if I can't put it into range of Dugtrio Earthquake. But I think that ultimately we're still okay. I'm going to make an aggressive switch to Dugtrio here. If I get Body Slammed, I should live it as long as I don't get parried. And Earthquake is going to put the Snorlax into range to die to Sandstorm here, if it went for Curse on the switch, which it did. So that's great. Now we simply will just win the game. I'm going to go Skarmory on this Gengar to block the explosion in particular. But my opponent went for Will-O-Wisp, so if they're playing the long game where they're baiting me to switch to something so that they can explode my Blissey later, then I guess they got me. But because they went for Will-O-Wisp there, I'm feeling like this is probably not an explosion Gengar. Starmie's in. It does reveal Recover, so it's probably 3 attacks Recover, but Thunderbolt plus Sand is going to kill it there. And now Gengar cannot. It just can't go for Explosion. It will just lose because I have Claydol on the back. I was thinking that this would probably be a taunt Gengar with the Will-O-Wisp, so it wouldn't just straight up lose to Blissey. But it seems to be 3 attacks with Will-O-Wisp, which is a set that I like, but it is admittedly pretty bad into Blissey. So, yeah, I'm simply just gonna get the win here on turn like 87. No, 86. We 86'd him. That's awesome. So that is basically gonna do it for this game. I hope that you guys like this type of team here. I know that it's long. It leads to some long games. We led to a long video, 2 hours. I hope you missed me so that you'll watch all of this. But just as a little sneak preview for maybe what the next video is going to be about. You guys know who this player is? Do you know who that is? Tub of Insects? The Tub of Insects? Anyone? Thoughts? That's Jimothy Cool. So I managed to get a game against Jimothy Cool on the ladder, playing with this Registeel team. So that's what the next video is going to be. So we'll see how that game went. Very interesting. We'll see that for that.